So, it's been ages since I read a story to you on World of Weird. It's a book of short stories of a rather dark nature. Each story has a foreword or an afterword, and in this case it's a foreword, so I'll read that to you and then start the story, which is Don't Go to La Tenta. In Cyprus there is a place called La Tenta, which sounds like it has been imported directly from Spain or Mexico. You can see the giant white pyramid shape of it from the mountains, which apparently lots of migrant workers came to build. We were out with our aunt when we saw the brown historical sign for the place on a country road. We were actually visiting quaint mountain villages that day. I took a wrong turn and Auntie cried out, "Don't go to La Tenta!" So we didn't. Then we ran out of days and we never did get back there. But her words had tucked a dark story into my mind. I came home and looked up what we had missed. It was one of those intriguing searches where one thing leads to another and another. And soon I was having dark ideas by the dozen. I have filtered some of them down to make this story, which has some facts and a lot of fiction. There is an archaeological Neolithic site at La Tenta. Non-native obsidian was found there and was thought to have come from Turkish Golu Dağ, which is a lava dome volcano. The remains of the houses on site are circular, and they did bury their dead under the floors. The rest is fiction, so don't get too excited if you visit and it isn't as creepy or as exciting as you were expecting. On the other hand, we never got around to going, so maybe it is. It's only a couple of euros to find out, but either way, don't blame me. So here's the story. Don't go to La Tenta. Juan Carlos was on holiday in Cyprus, trying out a bit of amateur archaeology in the mountains in Melanica region, close to the Limassol region. He was really just interrupting a mountain hike, but thought that scraping around in the dirt a bit while he rested and had his packed lunch might make things a bit more interesting. So he was quite surprised when he turned up a piece of obsidian that looked like a Neolithic blade. When he turned up a second small piece, he was a bit more excited. But when he unearthed the human jawbone, he decided to phone the Archaeological Society. Someone came out and met him and collected the pieces and marked off the site, taking Juan Carlos's address, number and other details, so he could be kept informed of the dig and awarded any finder's fee should such an eventuality arise. Unfortunately, Juan Carlos never lived to see the product of his discovery and the excavation of what would become the La Tenta site, as he died of an embolism on his flight back to Mexico. A team of Cypriot archaeologists led the excavation of the site, but when it became clear that it was a rather large site and the remains of the village began to be unearthed, help was brought in the form of migrant workers from Turkey. When the authorities realised a site equivalent in size to those at Paphos was being excavated, they arranged the construction of a semi-permanent tent structure to cover and preserve the remains and protect them from the mountain weather, which was subject to lots of rain and storms. The tent design was chosen because St. Helen, Aya Eleni, was said to have stopped and camped at that very site in 327 AD on her way to the site of the crucifixion, which was how the site got the name La Tenta, the Spanish-sounding element, a minor tribute to the deceased discoverer. Gradually, the shapes of small round houses emerged, as the Neolithic village was once again uncovered after so long below ground. The migrant workers did not stay very long. Quite a lot left and went back home, making excuses about low pay to their employers, but actually muttering about curses. Sometimes they muttered the names Erklikhan or Adagahan under their breath. It was true that there had been more deaths on site than was normal in this kind of work, quite a lot more in fact. The accident rate was rather high, and natural causes were at a peak. But the archaeologists did not understand the cursed label, or the muttering of ancient dark god names. It was just a Neolithic site, the same as any other. One of the main site archaeologists, Dimitris Manolis, was puzzled by the number of obsidian blades they were unearthing. Obsidian being a volcanic origin stone, a kind of dark glass forged in the volcano, was definitely not local to the island. He looked into it further and traced it to a lava dome volcano in Golu Dağ in Turkey. He wondered how it came to be on the island in such large quantities. Perhaps it had been used as a trading currency. Certainly the pieces had been worked into Neolithic blades. Rather strangely, they were finding that every circular house they excavated had at least one skeleton buried under the floor. It was quite common to find this occasionally, but not uniformly under every house, such as on this site. That was quite unusual. The more human bones they brought out, the more migrant workers muttered and panicked. One day a dozen of them just up and left. Dmitri spoke to one of the older workers, Abdullah, who had remained behind, still resolutely digging and dusting. Why are they all leaving? They say the site is cursed. They say the ancient god of the mountains who demanded sacrifices, Adagan, is still here. They say the god of evil and the underworld, the god of the dead, Erklikhan, is demanding more sacrifices for payment. Payment for what? For the obsidian. A new obsidian blade requires sacrifice before it is used. It is why there are so many bodies here. Every time we find another obsidian blade, someone dies. They are frightened. But why do they believe such things? Aren't they all good Muslims? What belief do they have in ancient gods and pagan customs? Well, they were okay to begin with, but then people started dying here, and the old superstitions found their way to the surface. But there have only been 2 fatal accidents on site. One where someone fell off the scaffold structure for La Tenta, and one where someone got crushed by metal support struts. That could have happened anywhere. Sure, it's nasty, but casual labourers always have accidents. It's a known fact. But it isn't just that. 2 have been killed in a minibus accident leaving the site, and 2 more coming off their mopeds on mountain roads. 2 have had heart attacks, and 1 fell in the fire at his campsite. 3 have died of strokes, and 3 more in their sleep. Several have died from chest infections. That's just all the ones I heard about. Everyone knows someone who died, it seems. Also, every time we unearth another obsidian blade, another death seems to happen soon afterwards. Dmitri shrugged. I suppose that explains why so many of them are leaving. They went back to work. It turned out they had actually uncovered most of the obsidian blades, and very few more were found. The site was fully excavated, and the pyramid tent structure was completed and fully secured. It covered an area at the back of the site where no remains had been found, and a stage was erected there. The prefecture officials planned to put on art shows at the site throughout the summer months to increase tourist activity and also draw in local people. Several refreshment businesses applied for planning permission nearby. Dmitri had a small crew left to finish up excavations at the site when they made their final discovery. They had thought the site was finished at the edge of the mountain. But opportunistic excavations, really, Dmitri was just filling in a final week, discovered the entrance to an ancient cave. The team of 6 dug their way into the cave and were astonished to find, deep within, the biggest heap of obsidian blades they had ever seen. There must have been thousands of them in a pile. Dmitri was just pulling out his phone to call the Museum of Antiquities and let them know of his find when a deep rumbling started up. The ground wobbled and shook, and Dmitri dropped his phone, which had no reception anyway. "Earthquake!" he shouted. "We have to get out of this cave right now." Everyone tried to run backwards towards the cave entrance, but the ground was rippling and moving like the floor of a funhouse at the fairground. But it was not fun. Rocks came tumbling down, blocking the freshly excavated cave entrance and continuing to fall until they filled the cave, suffocating everyone inside. Later, a search finally located the cave and retrieved the bodies of the 6 lost archaeologists. That was pretty much the end of it. The stash of obsidian at the back of the cave was fully reburied, and not found amongst the rubble moved to retrieve the bodies. That summer, the prefecture put on a concert to mark the official opening of the tourist site. Now all the walkways and labels were situated. They managed to get a big-name singer from Greece, and tickets sold out to the event. In fact, being open countryside, they were completely unable to stop the extra crowds from Larnaca and Limassol towns from pouring into the surrounding area, tickets or not. It was packed and the night was hot. If anyone managed to get close to the stage, they were not getting out again. The crowd pressed against them, holding them in place. Those that needed to go to the toilet ended up wetting themselves where they stood. There was just nowhere to go. They would have to wait until the end before they could get out. When the Greek singer came on stage, the crowd surged forwards, and many in the front were crushed to death against the stage. Bodies pushed and surged against the metal struts holding the huge La Tenta structure in place. Struts that, unbeknown to the authorities, had been weakened in the earthquake that had killed the archaeologists. As the pressure increased, the struts weakened and bent, and the huge structure came down on top of the crowd below. Security managed to get the Greek singer and the musicians out, but many of the audience were killed, and it became a national disaster, all over the news for days. After that, Erdogan was apparently satisfied. The covering structure was rebuilt more securely, and proper fencing was put around the site for future concerts. There were no more deaths. Until one day, someone potholing in the mountain came across the sealed cave full of obsidian. But that's another story.